I'm Alex Osborne from the National Library of Australia, and I'm our web archiving technical lead. About, I think it's 11 years now. It's my first job. It's the only job I've had. Basically my junior soccer coach when I was in university, she was, her day job was head of applications development at the National Library of Australia. And she suggested, why don't you come and do like work experience, like an internship at the library? And I did, and they were pretty pleased with what I worked on, which was some database archiving program that we were experimenting with. They ended up saying, hey, while you're at university, why don't you come and work here part-time and continue doing this web archiving support stuff? And it kind of just kept coming from there. And then, so I haven't worked full-time on web archiving that entire 11 years. I've often been sort of working on other projects. It's always been part of my job, but it's sort of a small part of my job. So I've done general software development on other library projects, as well as system administration. It'd be 1996 or slightly before. There was a few ad hoc things before that, but that was when the program really started. It was just a new emerging technology. We were one of the first organisations in Australia to have internet access, and so it was just seen as sort of quite important that people were publishing things on the internet, on the web, and like we capture everything else and add it to our collections, the web material was something we should be doing that for as well. It's basically anything published in Australia, anything published by an Australian, or anything that's significantly about Australia or Australians. A little bit. We would like to, but we've struggled with that from a tooling perspective. We do capture particularly sort of important social events like elections and things like that. So we will attempt to capture some of the politicians' political feeds and other kind of activists groups' websites and some social media. But it's, tooling has been an issue for that, and it's something we kind of are working on and want to get better at.
Just ask what social media channels you've tried to?
Primarily Twitter, but also some YouTube and some Instagram, and Facebook we haven't really been able to do. The Web Archive is available through our Trove service, which is a kind of an integrated search engine or a federated search engine that covers collection material in all Australian libraries, or most Australian libraries, that includes like digitised newspapers and digitised books, as well as actual physical books that haven't been digitised. You can sort of search for the holdings of all of the different libraries. So that service provides a unified way of discovering material, and the Web Archive is one of the, we call them islands within that service. Currently the Web Archive is essentially all public, and people can access it, except where there's been specific takedowns for copyright or objectionable material or illegal material or so forth. But everything other than that is publicly accessible.
Is it accessible everywhere, or do you have to come on site?
Accessible everywhere, with certain things where there has been a copyright concern or a particular concern about the material. Certain restricted things are inaccessible on site, but the majority of the content is available anywhere in the world. They are, yeah. We have a full text index that we recently built of everything, including both the selective crawls and the domain crawls. Primarily by me. That's essentially the main part of my job is so I'm not a curator, but I support our curators in terms of building tools, but also helping them with any sort of technical issues they have. We currently don't do domain crawls in-house, and they're currently done by the Internet Archive. So, but all of our selective stuff, and including some internal broad crawls, are done in-house with our own support. So the web archiving program is currently split into the curation team and the IT team. The IT team is currently just me. That may change in future. So I guess I'll start with me. I'm the Web Archive technical lead, and Generally, generally it's just me, but then for specific projects, I can sometimes get the support of a project team of general software development resources, project managers and business analysts and programmers within the IT division for specific development projects. Then within the curation team, we have the web archiving team is currently co-located with the government publications team. So they come under a common director, Paul Coburn, who's quite well known in the IIPC community. And then there is a manager of just the web archiving team under Paul. And then I think it's currently 2 web archivists. In the past, there's been 3. I think that might be a position they're trying to fill. What I just described is that's the staffing within our institution, within the National Library. But our web archiving program is a partnership program with our state libraries and some other cultural institutions, such as the War Memorial and other similar institutions. And so there is staffing at some of these partner institutions that curatorial staffing. Most of them are part-time as sort of part of a larger librarian or archivist role, although a couple of them do actually have dedicated web archiving librarians as well. We do limited QA on both the selective crawling and the domain crawling. The selective crawling is a manual QA step after a crawl happens. A archivist will just look through the site basically and see if everything's okay. If it's something that they've captured many times, it's probably a very limited scan of has it obviously changed in a way that's going to break something. If it's something new, they will do more in-depth, trying to look through the different types of content within the site to see if it works. And then for the domain crawling, it's very much just a sample of a small number of sites within it, currently not a particularly standardized or well-defined process. It's something we would like to improve on, and in particular, we are very interested in trying to automate or semi-automate QA in order to be more effective and to be able to, now that we've got digital legal deposit legislation and can more easily do broad crawling, it's just impractical for staffing reasons to be able to do effective QA without some sort of automation and tooling. So I guess the first significant change was going from a completely manual ad hoc process of just people running tools on their desktops and saving the archive websites into a shared network folder, into having a workflow system, which is our Pandas system, which kind of controls or guides curators through the process end to end, from capturing websites to describing them with metadata. Back at the start of our web archiving process, we didn't have digital legal deposit legislation, so getting permission from publishers was an important step in the process, and so it guided them through and recorded the response from publishers, whether they said yes, whether they said no, how many times we contacted them and that sort of thing, and then right through to publishing descriptive metadata about the like a browse path to be able to find websites on a particular topic, whether there were any access restrictions on it. So that was sort of the first big change for us. And then more recently, we have gotten digital legal deposit legislation, which allows the library to collect lots of different types of electronic material, not just websites, but ebooks and really anything that it's got some provisions that allow for policy to add new types of material. And so that has meant that we don't need the permission workflow, at least for Australian material. And that means that we can do broad domain crawls, and that has kind of significantly, we're still rethinking, that was only came in a couple of years ago, and we're still rethinking our workflows in order to be able to sort of take advantage of that and to be able to more efficiently capture more material. I think it depends very much on how much support you have. I think if you don't have any institutional IT support or support for the technology side of web archiving, then you're probably going to need some significantly more technical skills than you might otherwise need. I think it probably helps to be able to understand the structure of the web a bit, and that how websites are organized. And I think particularly for issues like quality assurance, it can be helpful to have some basic understanding of things like JavaScript and style sheets. Maybe not necessarily be able to have the coding skills to be able to recreate them, but at least to understand their function and a little bit how they interact in order to be able to figure out why something is not working and whether it can be fixed or not, and is there any potential workarounds for capturing content that maybe depends on dynamic data and whether you can manually capture that and add it in some way or not. Can be quite helpful. I think in many cultural institutions at the moment, web archiving is seen as kind of a very small niche thing. It's something new and that people don't understand very well. But I think people need to realize that information publication is changing and is continuing to move from physical media to electronic media, and the web is a big part of that. And I think institutions need to understand that and sort of come to embrace it and to put a bit more focus on web archiving, because it's where the rest of the world is kind of moving to. And if librarians and archivists kind of don't embrace that, we were going to be losing a lot of material that we really should be capturing. We have a program that's called the Pandora program. This is our collaborative web archiving program. And we are kind of the lead and sponsoring institution on it, in that we provide the technical expertise and the hardware and software hosting, and we maintain the collaborative web archive. It's kind of located at the National Library, but we are partnered with our state libraries, like New South Wales, Queensland, Victoria, and so forth. As well as some other cultural institutions, which is the War Memorial, IATSIS. Those are the ones that I can remember off the top of my head. There may be a couple of others. We've had partners come in for a time, and then they had they weren't able to continue due to funding or whatever reasons or restructures, Yeah, so our partners are primarily come in from a curatorial perspective. They don't usually have a lot of technical skills, so we sort of try and share the technical effort involved in web archives. It's also, they nominate things. Some of them that have staff who have been doing it for a long time have developed some level of technical skills and have been able to do quality assurance and patching of material in order to collect things that we didn't collect. The crawler couldn't collect itself. We also have a process where material can be uploaded into the archive, and some of them will run tools on their desktops and take advantage of that. It varies a lot depending on sort of the training level and their experience level as to how much they do that. That entire collaborative arrangement is likely to be revisited in the near future. There is currently a project underway to renegotiate it. So currently they don't, it's a service we provide to our partners for free. There's talk about maybe making it some sort of like joint funded program or something so that we can provide better services, but that sort of, something that's going to be negotiated over the next couple of years. Yes, they can, but currently in an informal way. We have a form where members of the public can nominate websites, and then that basically sends an email to our curatorial team, who'll then decide whether it actually meets the selection criteria or not. One of the things there is that process was designed when we had to ask permission, so we had to be quite limited in terms of the material we were collecting, just due to the amount of effort it took, and both to go out and contact people, but also to sort of set up the metadata and run the process. So we don't currently have a process like you see at the Internet Archive, where just a member of the public can just say, capture this page right now, and it just fully automatically does it. We don't currently have anything like that. Now that we've got digital legal deposit, that's potentially something we could explore in the future, is not just sort of random members of the public, but also people who have published websites to be able to I guess you could use the word self-deposit that kind of material. We've done a little, yes. For our most recent user interface redesign, we did a user experience study that looked into the usability of the archive primarily. And we've done some surveys about how people are using the archive.
Can you summarise some of the findings?
Yeah. So particularly the user experience survey is the one I'm more familiar with, or the user experience testing. One of the primary findings was that people didn't understand the web archive. They would often stumble into it, or even if they were specifically trying to use it, they would not understand the relationship between the original live website and the archived one, and sort of had trouble grokking what they were looking at. We also found that it could be a struggle at times to be able to find information within the archive. That search, in particular, providing good search services is something we've struggled with, and that users could find that quite frustrating. This is a topic that we've struggled with a bit, and not just for the web archive, but for some of our other collections as well. There's kind of a balance there that the library has to be a little bit careful with issues like copyright and privacy, because particularly the web archive contains a lot of information about people. The domain crawls they're not just business public websites that, but also people's personal websites and material about them. We kind of, within the library, we have a takedown process where people can, if there's material about them, we can take it down. But if we provide datasets of that data, we lose the ability to do that, and the ability to kind of enforce the privacy of it. So there's sort of a balance there that the library is concerned about. It's also been difficult due to resourcing to be able to, we find ourselves so behind in terms of being able to collect material and just making it the sort of the basic replay work, that putting a lot of time and effort into building data sets and so forth is kind of has not been a priority for us. But I think if there were, if we had some more interest from the researcher community, which we haven't had a lot of to date, in terms of, there's been a lot of interest in terms of just sort of basic usage of going and looking at older websites, but there hasn't been we haven't been contacted too much. There's been a couple, but we haven't been approached too much about people wanting large data sets. And I think if there was more of a demand for it, it's something we would probably be able to put more time into. It's about a little over 10 billion URLs now, and that includes duplicate snapshots. And it's, I think it's about 400 terabytes, growing by some 50 or so terabytes a year. For Icapture, we use actually several different pieces of software. For our selective archive, we're still using HTTrack. It's something that we've been using since the near beginning of the web archive, and it's showing its age now, and we would like to migrate away from it. But it has certain advantages particularly for quality assurance and being able to fix JavaScript issues that some of the newer tools don't have. We use Heritrix for broad crawling, including the domain crawls that the entire archive uses it. We also use it in-house for like subdomain crawls, like the Australian government, all the Australian government websites. And that's something we haven't tied into our selective workflows yet. So that's something that the use of Heritrix is currently limited to staff with reasonable technical skills, but we would like to be able to automate that more so that curators without those skills can also take advantage of it. And we also use a a tool for collecting documents like PDF files and Word documents individually. That's just like capture this right now, save it, and be able to instantly cut and paste the URL into a catalog record. So that's more your kind of publications collecting workflows rather than strictly web archiving. And then we also have more recently been using the web recorder that Rhizome developed for material that is difficult to capture but very high value. And we are also now experimenting with Browser for collecting media, YouTube, and that sort of thing. So we're currently using Open Wayback for access, which unfortunately has stagnated in recent years, so it's not really meeting our needs as well as we'd like it to. We've been experimenting internally with potentially switching to Python Wayback, but we haven't got that in production yet. We do have it like a staff-only sort of preview version of it. Search is integrated with our larger Trove search service, and it's based on Solr. And we've got some custom plugins and things that do things like grouping results by domain name and then grouping the different timestamp snapshots within that. We've also got we also calculate page rank for the collection and use that to influence the improve the relevance ranking of the results within Solr, and that's a custom system or custom batch process to calculate that. Preservation, we have an in-house storage layer called DOS, the Digital Object Storage System, that is shared with all of our digital collections, and it provides like an abstract object level storage that under the hood we use network attached storage and also tape storage, and it's that abstraction layer kind of manages storing the multiple copies and validating checksums and that sort of thing. And then the library as a whole uses Preservica for digital preservation, like format conversion and being able to find what types of material you have. Currently, we don't have the web archive in there just because it's so much bigger. It hasn't been, the digital preservation team has been focusing on other areas that are a little bit more achievable and don't require as much hardware resourcing, but I suspect into the future at some point we will integrate the web archive with Preservica. We have a dedicated web archiving team, a curation team within one of the collection areas, and then we also have a dedicated IT support role for web archiving specifically, and then some of the technical infrastructure like servers and other applications and software and storage and networks are kind of, there's a shared service within the library for all of our different types of collections. The web archive curation team are the primary people who do the web archiving. Occasionally we will get suggestions for things to archive from other parts of the library. For example, the music team might suggest something, or the oral history team might suggest a particular website that's of interest to them. Even our publications, sorry, not publications, even our exhibitions team will say, hey, after we've done this exhibition, can we archive our own website on a particular topic? But at the moment, that's sort of like, they send an email saying, hey, can you please capture this? They wouldn't actually do any of the actual process themselves. And occasionally, with the web archiving team, we'll get support from the cataloging team for particularly complex cataloging issues, but primarily cataloging for websites happens within the web archiving team. I think we can break those aims down into two areas. We've got the technical improvements we'd like to make, and then the kind of structural improvements we'd like to make. So on the technical side, we would like to be able to improve our tooling in order to be able to capture particularly platform and social media material and video and multimedia material. So we would like to be able to integrate tools like Browser and Heritrix into our workflows so that all of our curators can make use of them. At the moment, we're sort of doing them in an ad hoc, mostly manual process. And then on the process side, we're currently in the process of rethinking how our collaborative program with our state library works. We don't yet, that process is only just beginning, so I can't share what are the goals or the changes we're going to make there because they haven't been decided on, but I suspect there's going to be a big rethink there of how that works to take into account things like digital legal deposit, which some of the state libraries now have as well as the National Library having. So we really need to rethink how that all works and how the most effective way we can sort of share our resources. We began contracting the Internet Archive to collect our domain in 2006, and essentially we give them a specification for what we'd like to collect, which is generally all .au websites, as well as websites that are geographically IP located in Australia, like an Australian server. And each year they conduct a large-scale crawl and towards like a set quota of the number of URLs they're going to collect and deliver it to us. Originally, they delivered it to us on actual servers, the petterbox nodes that the Internet Archive had, but these days it's just hard disks that they send us in the mail, basically. In addition to that, we've had over the years some collaborative projects with them for developing tools and processes. So we've contracted them to do training on web archiving and things like that. It's generally a negotiation via email and telephone conversations that here's what we want, and it's just a sort of a procurement process basically that we negotiate a cost for the project, and the library sort of signs off on a purchase order for it, and they go ahead and do it and send us the results. For the actual describing what we're going to collect, that's just human communication, email and phone, and I think there's usually a documented agreement, like about what specific service they're going to provide to us. And then during the crawl process and after they've completed the crawl, they provide a limited portal that lets you preview the results of the crawl. So you can go and view the collected websites and view some reports and statistics about them. And then during the actual crawl process itself, the Internet Archive and our head of web archiving are the contact point for webmasters that might have an issue with the crawler. And so there's some negotiation there, and our head of web archiving will pay attention to some of the in-progress crawl reports and suggest scoping changes. We're collecting too much junk from this website that we don't really want, or there are things that are missing. Can we adjust the crawl configuration to be able to capture these things that we would like to focus on more? I think the biggest challenge is adapting to changing technology, and I think that's going to continue to be a problem for the foreseeable future. The new web standards that are being developed quite rapidly, it's something that we're struggling to keep up with. And the new ways of developing applications that are far more interactive. Well, in fact, I use the word application rather than website there because that's the way things are moving. We're talking about applications that users interact with rather than static websites and static material that is more sort of a published thing. And just how we cope with that is a real struggle. The advice I'd give to people starting out is to contact other people that are doing web archiving. So reach out to people through the IIPC and other channels. There are other people doing this, and you aren't alone. And you should learn from what everybody's been doing. When we started out, we were, for a long time, we were felt sort of quite isolated. But there is quite vibrant community doing this, and you can sort of learn from everybody's collective experience.